Welcome to the White Donkeys CommentCast.
Hey listener, welcome back. Ever get that feeling like, things aren't always what they seem?
Oh, absolutely. That's what we're all about here, right? Digging deeper.
Exactly. And today we're diving into a topic that's ripe for uncovering hidden truths, conspiracy theories. But not just any theories, we're talking about the ones that turned out to be shockingly true.
The ones that make you go, wait, they actually did what?
Exactly. We're dissecting this source you sent over, conspiracy theories that turned out to be true, unveiling the shocking realities.
Sounds juicy, right?
It really gets into the nitty-gritty of how these theories, even the ones that sound totally out there, sometimes expose uncomfortable truths about, well, everything. Power, secrecy, you name it. Okay, so before we get to the mind-blowing historical examples, let's break down this whole conspiracy theory thing. I mean, why are we so drawn to these stories, even if they sound a little,
Outlandish.
Yeah, like, is it just us? Or does our brain love a good mystery, even if it means connecting dots that maybe shouldn't be connected?
You're hitting on something there. The source talks about how humans are hardwired to find patterns, to make sense of chaos. And when those in charge, the ones calling the shots, aren't exactly transparent.
People start to wonder.
Exactly. Suspicion fills the void. And history's shown us time and again that sometimes those suspicions are totally justified.
Which makes you wonder how many so-called conspiracy theories were actually warnings we just chose to ignore.
Right. Chilling, isn't it?
Okay, so before we get into the specific cases, and trust me, you won't believe some of these, maybe we should set the stage a bit. Why do these theories pop up in the first place? Like, is there something about times of uncertainty or upheaval that makes people more likely to believe them?
It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? But you're right. The source argues that a lack of transparency from institutions is a breeding ground for all sorts of speculation. When people feel like they're not getting the full story, they tend to, shall we say, fill in the blanks themselves.
Makes sense. After all, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, right?
Ouch. There's that suspicion again. But in all seriousness, you've got a point. Our brains crave narratives, explanations that help us make sense of the world. And sometimes, even a far-fetched explanation is more comforting than facing the unknown.
Especially if that explanation confirms our existing beliefs or suspicions about those in power, right? It's like we're always looking for evidence to support what we already think, even if it means ignoring the stuff that doesn't fit.
Oh, 100%. And, the source points out something interesting about this. It suggests that marginalized communities, the ones who've historically been mistreated or ignored, might be even more susceptible to conspiracy beliefs.
Which, when you think about it, makes sense. If you've experienced injustice firsthand, you're probably more likely to question the motives of those in charge.
Precisely. It speaks to a lack of trust, a sense that the system isn't always working in everyone's best interests.
So, to recap, we've got this potent mix of factors. Lack of transparency, a desire for explanations, and, frankly, a healthy dose of distrust in authority. It's like the perfect storm for conspiracy theories to flourish.
And flourish they have. But here's the thing. Sometimes, even when rooted in distrust and speculation, these theories uncover uncomfortable truths about the world we live in.
Because sometimes the most outlandish stories, they're rooted in reality. All right, ready to dive into some I told you so moments in history?
Oh, absolutely. Let's get into it.
We got to start with Watergate. I mean, that's like the granddaddy of political scandals.
Right. It's crazy how something that starts with a break-in, a pretty small-time crime, turns into this huge thing, right?
Right, like who knew a couple of guys with bugs and some tape could bring down a whole president, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It wasn't just the burglars, right? It was the cover-up, the web of lies, the whole system trying to sweep it under the rug.
And it really makes you think, how often does stuff like that happen and we never even find out?
Exactly. And, the source emphasizes how crucial the press was in uncovering everything. It was journalists digging deep, asking tough questions, not letting those in power get away with vague answers.
The ones they tried to dismiss as what, conspiracy theorists?
Exactly. That you wouldn't let it go, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because Watergate shows what happens when power goes unchecked and how vital a free press is.
It's like a reminder that even the most powerful people are accountable, at least in theory, right?
In a functioning democracy, for sure.
Yeah.
But enough about politics for now. Let's talk mind control, shall we?
Oh, man, here we go. Project MKUltra, right?
Yeah, buckle up, listener, because this one's a doozy.
The idea that the CIA was secretly experimenting on people trying to control their minds? It's like something out of a movie.
Except it really happened. The Cold War was a trip, man. Everyone was so paranoid, convinced the other side had some secret weapon, and I guess...
They figured, hey, why not get in on the action?
Yeah, and the source gets into how the CIA, they were obsessed with this idea of mind control, of creating these, like, super spies who could do their bidding.
And they experimented with some wild stuff.
Oh yeah, LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation. They threw everything at the wall to see what would stick, and they didn't really care who got hurt in the process.
And they did all this in secret, right? Like, no oversight, no accountability.
Which is terrifying when you think about the ethical implications. I mean, we're talking about messing with people's minds, their very sense of self, without their knowledge or consent.
It's a dark chapter for sure, and a reminder that even in a democracy, power can be abused in really messed up ways. Okay, before this gets too dark, let's switch gears again. You mentioned the Tuskegee syphilis study earlier, and honestly, that one's always stuck with me as a truly horrifying example of scientific overreach.
It was one of those stories that just makes you question everything, you know? Like, how could something like this happen? And for so long.
I know, right? For 40 years, the government deliberately withheld treatment from a group of black men with syphilis, just to observe the progression of the disease.
And they lied to those men, told them they were receiving free health care, when in reality they were being denied treatment, even after penicillin became available as a cure.
It's like the ultimate betrayal of trust. And it really highlights the systemic racism that was, and sadly, still is present in our institutions.
Absolutely. The Tuskegee study is a stark reminder that scientific curiosity should never come at the expense of human life and dignity.
It's a tough one to stomach, for sure. All right, let's talk about a conspiracy that sounds like it's straight out of a spy novel, but this one is all too real. Operation Mockingbird. It always makes you wonder, how much influence does the media really have?
Well, get this. During the Cold War, the CIA had this program, right, where they were secretly trying to influence the media, both here in the US and overseas.
Seriously, like planting stories, that kind of thing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
They called it Operation Mockingbird. And the source paints this picture of the CIA recruiting journalists, some knowingly, some not, to spread propaganda.
Wow, talk about a manipulation tactic, right? And it makes you think, how much of what we read is actually,
Planted.
Yeah. It's unsettling, to say the least, and it makes you really value those journalists who are out there digging for the truth, even when it's dangerous.
Absolutely. They're the real deal. Okay, ready for another one. This one's messed up on a whole other level. Project Sunshine.
Lay it on me. What is that? It's just something to do with renewable energy.
Huh, not even close. So after World War II, everyone's freaking out about radiation, right?
Makes sense with all the talk of nuclear war and fallout shelters. Scary times.
For sure. So the government, they launched this project to study the effects of radiation on human tissue.
Okay, where did they get the tissue from?
That's the messed up part. They were collecting samples from deceased people, often without their families even knowing.
No way. That's awful. You can't just take people's, without consent.
Nope. Ethically very shady. And it caused a huge uproar when it finally came out.
I bet. Okay, let's move on to something a little less morbid. What about Operation Paperclip? That one always sounded familiar, but I could never remember exactly what it was.
Ah, that's the one where the U.S. government recruited Nazi scientists after World War II.
Wait, seriously? They brought, former enemies to work with them?
Yep. The Cold War was in full swing, and the U.S. was desperate to get ahead in the technology race. These Nazi scientists, they had expertise in things like rocketry and weapons development,
So they basically turned a blind eye to their past.
Pretty much. It was a controversial move, to say the least. Some people argued it was a necessary evil, to fight communism, but...
Others thought it was completely unethical.
Exactly. And it's still debated today. Okay, switching gears again, let's talk about COINTELPRO.
Oh yeah, wasn't that the FBI program where they spied on civil rights activists?
That's the one. The source goes into how the FBI, they were basically trying to discredit and disrupt any group they deemed subversive.
And they went after some big names, right? Like Martin Luther King Jr.
Yep, he was a major target. Wiretaps, informants. They even tried to blackmail him. It was a blatant attack on civil liberties.
Crazy to think that an organization meant to uphold the law was doing stuff like that. Okay, one last conspiracy for the road. Tell me about the Iran-Contra affair.
Ah, that's a classic. Basically, the Reagan administration secretly sold arms to Iran, which was under an arms embargo at the time.
And they did this to what, fund the Contras in Nicaragua?
Exactly, and they lied to Congress about it too. It was a huge scandal, and it really showed how far some people in power are willing to go to get what they want.
Wow, talk about a tangled web. All right, listener, we've covered a lot of ground today, from government cover-ups to secret experiments to outright abuses of power. It's a lot to process, right?
Definitely. But here's the thing. It's not about being paranoid or distrusting everyone in authority. It's about staying informed, asking questions, and never taking anything at face value.
Because sometimes the truth is stranger and more disturbing than fiction.
And sometimes those conspiracy theories, they're not so crazy after all.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all of this. Until next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the White Donkeys CommentCast. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to let us know what topics you want to hear next. See you in the next episode.